In my 30 years or so of doing this, I have not seen a time actually when there is greater convergence between the United States and Europe, as well as with key partners in Asia on the approach to China. Both the United States and Europe are not in favor of decoupling, but we are in favor of de-risking. And you've heard that from the leadership on both sides of the Atlantic. But not only have you heard that, you've actually seen that in practice through the Trade and Technology Council, as well as other work that we're doing with the European Union. You're seeing country after country put in place investment screening mechanisms, not for the purpose of stopping Chinese investment, but for making sure that in discrete areas, industries, companies, geographic areas where that investment could pose a challenge or to our security, we have the appropriate mechanisms in place. We're now talking about as well, in very discrete ways, looking at outward investment to make sure that it's not going to support developments in China that could pose a threat to our security. We're working more closely together than ever on building supply chain diversification and resilience, with the EU putting in place early warning systems to disruptions in the supply chain, as well as diversifying them. Again, we're coming together to do that. You see it as well in the collaboration that we've had on export controls, not for the purpose of cutting off trade with or supplies to China of technology, but again, in very discrete areas where that technology may go to, for example, help China develop what is an opaque nuclear weapons program or other things that could pose a threat to our security, or challenges to our values like surveillance technology. Well, we're taking appropriate measures there. And when it comes to non-market economic practices, there too, the United States and Europe are increasingly aligned, and that's important because individually, if we're trying to get China to change some of the unfair practices that it's engaged in, the United States is about 20% of the world's economy. Europe's about 20% of the world's economy. When we combine and address these issues together, all of a sudden we're almost 50% of the world's economy, and that's a little bit harder for China to ignore when it comes to trying to change some of the practices they're engaged in. So I think we're seeing that it's profoundly in the mutual interest of both Europe and the United States to be aligned in our approach, as it is for key countries in Asia. We just came from G7 meeting where Japan and Korea were both present. I think you've seen a similar alignment, a similar convergence in the approach that we're taking to China there as well.
I just came to hear from the Stockholm China Forum, the German Marshall Fund's annual meeting on China, and I tried to outline how we see the principal approach to perhaps just two remarks. One is Europe needs to unite and stick to the unity on how to have a common approach to China. It is simply the fact that 27 countries need to stick together to have the clout and to have the power needed. And second, transatlantic cooperation is key in this area as well, I would say. And it has sometimes been questioned, as you know. And I would say that those now saying that, or asking themselves, does Europe need to choose as it goes between the US and China? They simply ask themselves the wrong question. We should instead unite in a principally anchored idea on how an open world should act, how we reduce dependency, how we de-risk, regardless if China want to be de-risked or not, and try to be as open as possible, taking our own security concerns into account. I think the US has been a few years ahead of Europe, but I think very many countries now realize this is not the time for naivety. It's not the time to stop communicating and cooperating with China either. Decoupling is not the answer, but to have a serious common approach to this matter, I think would be. So my short answer, yeah, I think there is a beginning convergence going on, which I would appreciate very, very much. And if Sweden can be helpful in that process, I would be very proud of that.